welcome to another episode of The Practical Patriot. That's me. I'm Marissa Selvig. And today, our theme is There is Nothing New Under the Sun. Boy, isn't that the case. I am going to be reading a bunch of letters from George Washington today, and they are fascinating, I think. And they talk about things that we are still dealing with today in 2021. Most of these letters were written in 1790. That is a long period of time. But everything is still the same. People are fighting about taxes. They're fighting about debt. They're talking about our great country and the division in it. There's a letter to Alexander Hamilton about the debt. And, the one about Alexander Hamilton isn't about the debt. It's about a bunch of things. And then differences in political opinions, and one about the media, which is hilarious because isn't that what we deal with on a daily basis? I just want to let you know that I am being partially censored on Facebook right now, which is really great. Not. They have banned me from posting in a group or creating a group or creating an event or posting in an event or making a live video. I can't make a live video on my page. I can't make a live video on my Selah page, which is the worship page that I do, or this Practical Patriot page that I have over on Facebook. It's just wonderful. I love censorship. Not good. We all have a right to say what we want. You people who know this have been watching me. I don't speak violence. I don't speak hatred. I speak the truth. I speak the founding fathers, and I've been trying to figure out why they banned me. There wasn't even a violation listed in the violation section when I went and checked on it after they sent me that little message that says you are restricted. And I believe that they've been demoting me in the algorithm because hardly anybody is seeing my posts anymore. In order for them to even see a post that I made yesterday, I had to contact some of my friends and say, did you see this? Can you please share this post? Because I'm doing a couple days of prayer and fasting for the nation right now. I think it's important that the people of God arise and pray for our country so that we can keep it on track, because the Lord will protect us no matter what. He loves his people and we love him. So we are going to start today with a letter to James Madison from May 20th, 1792. This is good. Oh, no, I'm not. Yes, I am. No, I'm not. Wrong page. We are going to read a letter from December 8th, 1790 from George Washington to Congress. It is from his second annual message to Congress. So this is towards the end of the speech. Gentlemen of the House of Representatives, the sufficiency of the revenues that you have established for the objects to which they are appropriated leaves no doubt that the residuary provisions will be commensurate to the other objects for which the public faith now stands pledged. Allow me, moreover, to hope that it will be a favorite policy with you not merely to secure a payment of the interest of the debt funded, but as far and as fast as the growing resources of the country will permit, to exonerate it of the principal itself. Wouldn't that be nice in today's society? The appropriation you have made of the Western lands explain your dispositions on this subject, and I am persuaded that the sooner that valuable fund can be made to contribute, along with other means, to the actual reduction of the public debt, the more salutary will the measure be to every public interest, as well as the more satisfactory to our constituents. The same. He's talking about the debt. Our debt is terrible. It is almost $30 trillion. Did you know that? $30 trillion. I was looking at that last night. That is, if I can remember correctly, $82-ish thousand per person. It's like $222,000 per taxpayer. It's crazy. Unacceptable. Unacceptable. Same thing here. All right. So the next, I got a little hair on my nose, excuse me. The next letter is to James Madison from 1792. This one talks about our great country and how rich it is, and how we have to be careful that we keep each other in check. So, that to impress these things it might, among other things, be observed that we are all children of the same great country, a country great and rich in itself, capable and promising to be as prosperous and as happy in the annals of history as have ever been brought to our view. Isn't that awesome? As happy as the annals of history have ever been brought to our view. A country great and rich. I believe that our country is still great and rich and capable and promising. I do. And as happy as any of the annals of history have ever been brought to our view, that to our interest, however diversified in local and smaller matters, is the same in all the great and essential concerns of the nation. That the extent of our country, the diversity of our climate and soil, and the various productions of the states, and consequent of both, are such as to make one part not only convenient, but perhaps indispensably necessary to the other part, and may render the whole, at no distant period, one of the most independent in the world. I love George Washington. He had such a good outlook. That the established government, being the work of our own hands, with the seeds of amendment engrafted in the Constitution, may by wisdom, good dispositions, and mutual allowances, aided by experience, bring it as near to perfection as any human institution ever approximated, and therefore the only strife among us ought to be who should be the foremost in facilitating and finally accomplishing such great and desirable objects by giving every possible support and cement to the Union. That, however necessary it may be to keep a watchful eye on public servants and public measures, yet there ought to be limits of it, for suspicions unfounded and jealousies too lively are irritating to honest feelings, and oftentimes are productive of more evil than good. That's good. When we are too suspicious, I think that's happening a lot today on both sides of the aisle. Everybody is too suspicious of the other side. We just need to let each other be. Suspicions unfounded, jealousies too lively can be irritating to honest feelings, and oftentimes are productive of more evil than good. Nothing new under the sun. It's the same now. The next one, this one is a little longer and I love it. It is a letter he wrote to Alexander Hamilton. And it's great. Ready for this? Written July 29th, 1792. On my way home, and since my arrival here, I have endeavored to learn from sensible and moderate men, known friends of the government, the sentiments which are entertained of public measures. These all agree that the country is prosperous and happy, but they seem to be alarmed at that system of policy and those interpretations of the Constitution which have taken place in Congress. Others, less friendly perhaps to the government and more disposed to arraign the conduct of its officers, among whom may be classified my neighbor and quondam friend Colonel M, go further and enumerate a variety of matters, which, as well as I can recollect, may be adduced under the following heads. First, this is so good, that the public debt is greater than we can possibly pay before other causes of adding new debt to it will occur. Well, really? And this has been artificially created by adding together the whole amount of the debtor and the creditor sides of the accounts instead of taking only their balances, which could have been paid off in a short time. Second, that this accumulation of debt has taken forever out of our power those easy resources of revenue, which, applied to the ordinary necessities and exigencies of government, would have answered them habitually and covered us from habitual murmurings against taxes and tax gatherers, reserving extraordinary calls for extraordinary occasions, and would animate the people to meet them. Third, that the calls for money have been no greater than we must generally expect, and for the same or equivalent exigencies, yet we are already obliged to strain the impost till it produces clamor, and will produce evasion and war on our citizens to collect it, and even resort to an excise law of odious character with the people, partial in its operation, unproductive unless enforced by arbitrary and vexatious means, and committing the authority of the government in parts where resistance is most probable and coercion is least practicable. Fourth, they cite propositions in Congress and suspect other projects on foot still to increase the mass of the debt. Fifth, they say that by borrowing 2/3 of the interest, we might have paid off the principal in 2/3 of the time, but that from this we are precluded by its being made irredeemable, but in small portions and long terms. Sixth, that this irredeemable quality was given it for the avowed purpose of inviting its transfer to foreign countries. What does that sound like? Still that way? I love this. Everything's the same. Seventh, they predict that this transfer of the principal, when completed, will occasion an exportation of $3 million annually for the interest, a drain of coin, of which as there has been no example, no calculation can be made of its consequences. Eighth, that the banishment of our coin will be completed by the creation of 10 millions of paper money in the form of bank bills now issuing into circulation. Ninth, they think the 10 or 12 per count annual profit paid to the lenders of this paper medium are taken out of the pockets of the people who would have had without interest the coin it is banishing. 10th, that all the capital employed in paper speculation is barren and useless, producing, like that on a gaming table, no accession to itself, and is withdrawn from commerce and agriculture where it would have produced addition to the common mass. 11th, that it nourishes in our citizens vice and idleness instead of industry and morality. 12th, that it has furnished effectual means of corrupting such a portion of the legislature as it turns the balance between honest voters, whichever way it is directed. 13th, that this corrupt squadron, deciding the voice of the legislature, have manifested their dispositions to get rid of the limitations imposed by the Constitution on the general legislature, limitations on the faith of which the states acceded to that instrument. Seriously. Has anything changed? 14th, that the ultimate object of all this is to prepare the way for a change from the present republican form of government to that of a monarchy, of which the British Constitution is to be the model. 15th, that this was contemplated in the convention. They say it is no secret, because its partisans have made none of it, to effect that when it was impracticable, but they are still eager after their object and are predisposing everything for its ultimate attainment. This is unbelievable. I love this. 16th, so many of them have got into the legislature that, aided by the corrupt squadron of paper dealers who are at their devotion, they make a majority in both houses. 17th, the Republican Party, who wish to preserve the government in its present form, are fewer even when joined by the 2, 3, or half dozen anti-federalists, where though they dare not avow it, are still opposed to any general government, but being less so to a Republican than a monarchical one. They naturally join those whom they think is pursuing the lesser evil. 18th, of all the mischiefs objected to the system of measures before mentioned, none, they add, is so afflicting and fatal to every honest hope as the corruption of the legislature. It's funny, but it's really not funny because it's the same today. As it was the earliest of these measures, it became the instrument for producing the rest, and it will be the instrument for producing in future a king, lords and commons, or whatever else those who direct it may choose. withdrawn such a distance from the eye of their constituents, and these so dispersed as to be inaccessible to public information, and particularly to that of the conduct of their own representatives, they will form the worst government upon earth if the means of their corruption be not prevented. Preach it, George Washington. 19th. The only hope of safety, they say, hangs now on the numerous representation which is to come forward in the ensuing year. But should the majority of the new members still beholden in the same principles with the present, show much dereliction to the Republican government, and such a disposition to encroach upon or explain away the limited powers of the Constitution in order to change it, it is not easy to conjecture what would be the result, nor what means would be restored for correction of the evil. True wisdom, they acknowledge, should direct temperate and peaceable measures. But add the division of sentiment and interest happens, unfortunately, to be so geographical that no mortal can say that what is most wise and temperate would prevail against what is more easy and obvious, they declare. They can contemplate no evil more incalculable than the breaking of the Union in two or more parts. Yet, when they view the mass which opposed the original coalescence, when they consider that it lay chiefly in the southern quarter, that the legislature have availed themselves of no occasion of allaying it, but on the contrary, whenever northern and southern prejudices have come into conflict, the latter has been sacrificed and the former soothed. 20th, that the owners of the debt are in the southern and the holders of it in the northern division. 21st, that the anti-federal champions are now strengthened in argument by the fulfillment of their predictions, which has been brought about by the monarchical federalists themselves, who, having been for the new government merely as a stepping stone to the monarchy, have themselves adopted the very construction of which, when advocating its acceptance before the tribunal of the people, they declared it insusceptible, whilst the Republican Federalists who espouse the same government for its intrinsic merits are disarmed of their weapons, that which they denied as prophecy being now become true history. Who, therefore, can be sure, they ask, that these things may not proselyte the small number which was wanting to place the majority on the other side? And this, they add, is the event at which they tremble. These, as well as memory serves me, are the sentiments which directly and indirectly have been disclosed to me. To obtain light and to pursue truth being my sole aim, and wishing to have before me the explanations of as well as the complaints on measures in which the public interest, harmony, and peace is so deeply concerned, and my public conduct so much involved, it is my request, and you would oblige me in furnishing me with your ideas upon the discontents here enumerated. And for this purpose I have thrown them into heads or sections and numbered them, at those ideas may apply to the correspondent numbers. It's amazing. It's all the same. I love that part. That's how I feel. This is how I feel in this part right here in 318. I resound with this. To obtain light and pursue truth being my sole aim, and wishing to have before me the explanations of as well as the complaints on measures in which the public interest, harmony, and peace is so deeply concerned. I think that's important. All right. Last one, I believe. No, two more. Okay, so this one is about differences in political opinions. I think we have a lot of that going on. Since the beginning of time. There's more to life than just politics. Okay, so this one was written to, again, Alexander Hamilton in August 26th, 1792. A little bit further down in the letter. Differences in political opinions are as unavoidable as to a certain point they may perhaps be necessary. But it is to be regretted exceedingly that subjects cannot be discussed with temper on the one hand, or decisions submitted to without having the motives which led to them improperly implicated on the other. And this regret borders on chagrin when we find that men of abilities, zealous patriots, having the same general objects in view and the same upright intentions to prosecute them, will not exercise more charity in deciding on the opinions and actions of one another. Sounds familiar. When matters get to such lengths, the natural inference is that both sides have strained the cords beyond their bearing, and that a middle course would be found the best, until experience shall have pointed out the right mode. Or, which is not to be expected, because it is denied to mortals, there shall be some infallible rule by which we could forejudge events. Wouldn't that be nice? Having premised these things, I would fain hope that liberal allowances will be made for the political opinions of one another. That would be nice. And instead of those wounding suspicions and irritating charges with which some of the gazettes are so strongly impregnated, and cannot fail, if preserved in, of pushing matters to extremity and thereby tear the machine asunder, that there might be mutual forbearances and temporizing yieldings on all sides. So what was the newspaper doing? It was splitting up the country. Sounds familiar. There's nothing new under the sun. Oh, I love it. Without these, I do not see how the reins of government are to be managed or how the union of the states can be much longer preserved. This is why history is so important. These are letters written by George Washington. Are these taught in school? No, they're not. It's fascinating, and it's all history, real history. Not a fake book, not made up history or changed history like they're trying to do in some places, trying to change history. History is history. You can't change it. What happened, happened. Okay. Without these, I do not see, I'm going to start where I left off. Without these, I do not see how the reins of government are to be managed or how the union of states can be much longer preserved under those circumstances. How unfortunate would it be if a fabric so goodly, erected under so many providential circumstances, and in its first stages, having acquired such respectability, should, from diversity of sentiments or internal obstructions to some of the acts of government, for I cannot prevail on myself to believe that these measures are, as yet, the deliberate acts of a determined party, should be harrowing our vitals in such a manner as to have brought us to the verge of dissolution. Melancholy thought, but one at the same time that shows the consequences of diversified opinions when pushed with too much tenacity, exhibits evidence also of the necessity of accommodation and of the propriety of adopting such healing measures as will restore harmony to the discordant members of the union and the governing powers of it. Censorship is not a healing measure. Having regular, rational conversations is a healing measure. Calling people names is not a healing measure. Being calm and kind to one another can be a healing measure. I do not mean to apply this advice to measures which are past or to any character in particular. I have given it in the same general terms to the other officers of the government. My earnest wish is that balsam may be poured into all the wounds which have been given to prevent them from gangrening and from those fatal consequences which the community may sustain if it is withheld. The friends of the union must wish this. Those who are not, but wish to see it rended, will be disappointed, and all things, I hope, will go well. Isn't that good? I wish that too. That a healing oil get poured all over America. That's why we pray. That's why we pray. That a healing oil will come over America. That each side can stop hating the other side. We are all Americans. We just have different opinions. We shouldn't censor each other. All right. This one, excuse me, is from a letter to Edmund Randolph. This is the last one I'll read today. To Edmund Randolph on August 26th, 1792, same day as he wrote the last letter. Okay. This is a little bit further down in the letter. Again, the beginning is all about pleasantries and talking about family and stuff like that. Often he starts his letters, "My dear sir." Yeah, "My dear sir." I like that. Could you imagine if we started our emails like that? "My dear madame," "My dear sir." That'd be funny. So we're like, "What up, dude?" Just kidding. "I should be happy in the meantime to see a cessation of the abuses of public officers and those attacks upon almost every measure of government with which some of the gazettes are so strongly impregnated, and which cannot fail, if preserved in with the malignancy they now teem, of rending the Union asunder. The seeds of discontent, distrust, and irritations which are so plentifully sown can scarcely fail to produce this effect and to mar that prospect of happiness which perhaps never beamed with more effulgence upon any people under the sun. At this, too, a time when all Europe are gazing with admiration at the brightness of its prospects. And for what is all this? Among other things, to afford nuts for our transatlantic, what shall I call them? Foes. In a word, if the government and the officers of it are to be the constant theme for newspaper abuse, and this too without condescending to investigate the motives or the facts, it will be impossible, I can see, for any man living to manage the helm or to keep the machine together. But I am running from my text, and therefore will only add assurances of the effect, esteem, and regard of which I am always yours, George Washington. So, that's all I got today. Nothing has changed. The media is still trying to sow discord, just like the gazettes and the newspapers. There's always been differences in political opinions, trying to rip the country apart. The debt has always been a problem since the dawn of time. And we've got to get our poop in a pile and fix that. There are ways that we can bring it down, and who knows if it can ever be wiped away. It's $30 trillion and rising every second of the day. But if we could just be practical and stop spending and cut out all the wasteful stuff, that could be a start. Then we have a great country, and it is beautiful from sea to shining sea. We have cornfields, wheat fields, industrial areas, mountains, vineyards, beaches. What am I forgetting? We have a beautiful country. It's gorgeous. And we need to try and keep it together. We don't want to split apart. That's not what we want. Well, in closing, I just want to say there's nothing new under the sun. It's true. And as a reminder, light always overcomes the darkness. It will. It will always overcome the darkness. So we need to be kind and shine the light of liberty in our country. Have a great day. I'll see you next time.
Thanks for watching The Practical Patriot. Like and subscribe below.
That's right.